But there was no sense in guessing what else was down there. It was time for the archaeologists to see for themselves. A massive excavation began, with hundreds of workers brought in to help unearth this army of stone soldiers. One by one, terracotta men poked their heads from the earth and breathed fresh air for the first time in centuries. Along with the soldiers, hundreds of animal statues were also recovered, including those of birds and military horses. There were also more than 500 working horses pulling close to 150 full-sized chariots. Lay people were also well represented, as statues of entertainers like acrobats, strongmen, and musicians were unearthed as well. This discovery was unlike anything the archaeologists had seen before. Yet one question remained: what was this terracotta army doing here? Scholars look to historian Sima Qian's Shihi, also known as the Records of the Grand Historian, for the answer. Written in 94 BCE, the ancient historical text includes tales of the ambiguous King Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Shortly after ascending the throne at age 13, King Shi Huang began work on an enormous mausoleum to serve as both his final resting place as well as a testament to his greatness. However, not everyone was a fan of the new ruler. While King Shi Huang is credited for uniting the warring states of China, he did so through conquest and plenty of bloodshed. Yet, even after his enemies were no more, the emperor feared they'd return to seek revenge in the next life. And so, as his grand mausoleum began to take shape, he commissioned local craftsmen to build terracotta soldiers to protect his tomb. Qin Shi Huang was laid to rest in 210 BCE, and his army of over 8,000 has stood guard ever since. Yet, it appeared that these soldiers weren't much for fighting, as archaeologists were now snaking their way through the ranks in search of King Shi Huang's treasures. That is, until they hit a snag. As the archaeologists approached King Shi Huang's tomb, they began picking up high levels of radiation. Had the emperor's builders left behind more than just soldiers to protect his resting place? The answer, it seemed, was far more unbelievable. During his lifetime, Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with discovering the key to eternal life, and went to incredible lengths to find it. In addition to dispatching armies in search of some kind of everlasting elixir, the emperor also became fond of one unusual liquid. And that liquid was mercury. Believing the radioactive element would preserve his youth, Qin Shi Huang surrounded himself with mercury and actually ingested it regularly. When his great mausoleum was completed, he even had rivers of the metal flowing through it. While this prevalence of mercury definitely contributed to the emperor's early demise at 49, it also made Qin Shi Huang's resting place highly radioactive. To this day, the tomb remains sealed from even the most experienced archaeologists. Nearly 50 years later, Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum is now open to the public and attracts thousands of tourists each year. But while the legend of the Terracotta Army is one known far and wide, there's another ancient artifact whose origin has been highly disputed until now. The ancient Jewish manuscripts known as the Dead Sea Scrolls have fascinated scholars for decades. While no one's exactly sure of the details surrounding them, their true origins, for instance, experts agree on a few facts. The scrolls were first found inside an alcove in the Qumran Caves in the Judean desert in the 1940s. After a chemical analysis, scientists dated the pieces of parchment and papyrus between 150 BC and 70 AD. Once they'd uncovered the scrolls, the experts were stunned. They contained some of the oldest known biblical documents ever found, and for their age, they were in amazing condition. To this day, the discovery brings people from all over to visit the Qumran Caves. Specifically, people flock to the caves to see firsthand where some of the most historically astounding texts were found. This gives them a glance at one of the world's oldest mysteries. Who wrote the darn things? First, scholars generally believe the Essenes, a small sect of Jews who occupied the region near the Qumran Caves, penned these early documents. However, one man isn't buying this commonly held belief. and his theory could have major impact. During a National Geographic program called Writing the Dead Sea Scrolls, an archaeologist named Robert Cargill said, "Jews wrote the scrolls, but it may not have been just one specific group. It could have been groups of different Jews." Cargill's new research